Hey everyone, this is Lisa. I'm super excited to announce that this week on our podcast is Breakfast Included. Bernie and I are speaking with a true music legend. He's not just the guy who provides the heartbeat for Duran Duran's iconic sound. He's also a rock and roll Hall of Famer and a Grammy Award winner. That's right, I'm talking about Roger Taylor. Roger graciously spent some of his downtime to chat with us about his role in Duran Duran, their new album Danse Macabre, and what's important to him outside of the band. Stick around as we dive into the life of the man behind the drums.
All right, tell everyone who you are.
I am Roger Taylor, and I play drums for Duran Duran.
Right on. How's it going, man? Good to see you.
It's going really well. Yeah, I'm enjoying being back home, as I'm sure you are too.
Yeah.
Because we love our job, but we do love getting home as well. I don't know about you, but I love getting back in my home environment and back with the family and whatever.
Yeah, I think we're at that point in our career where we can only go out for a certain amount of time before we're ready to come home, right?
Exactly. You know what? When I was even like 15, 20 years ago, I never wanted the tour to end. I would dread the end of the tour, and I just wanted to keep on running and running and running. But I think you're right. I've got to a different point in my life where being away definitely has a sell-by date. I started really hankering to get home, and as you know, we've done a lot of work this year.
Yeah.
So we're a well-deserved break.
Yeah, we were pretty consistent this last year, right?
I think consistent is the right word. Yeah, and I was with somebody last night, and they'd been to the O2 show in London, and they were going, "Oh, it was amazing, and it was great, and we had such a great time, and we loved the show." And I realised that we carried on for another 30 shows or something.
Yeah.
With the same intensity, and I think it was a very high level of production that people hadn't seen us produce before. And I realized we carried on when we took it all across America, didn't we? Which was pretty amazing. And every night, I've got to say, the response was incredible.
Yeah, I know. I remember having conversations with John about that this show was probably that every night you guys were in a zone, and Lisa and I would talk as well at the show, like how good you guys were performing,
Consistently.
Oh well, we of course we do have gratitude for guys like you that deliver. You deliver the stage for us to walk on every night.
I was going to get to that.
You agree with that? We woke up an hour before the show, and we just have to walk on stage. But I know that you guys are there all day long, working on a production and making sure everything's tuned up and ready to go. So we do really appreciate that.
Well, thanks, man. I appreciate it too. I appreciate everything. Though, like I say, there's a reason that guys like me and Kevin have been there for so long, as we enjoy the gig.
Yeah.
It's like it's a very cliche thing to say, but it's like family.
Yeah. Cool.
Let's talk a little bit about this new album. Is it Macabre? Danse Macabre? Danse Macabre?
We call it Danse Macabre.
Yeah.
I'm sure I know that Simon has a very special way of pronouncing it, but I'm probably still not getting. But I call it Danse Macabre.
Yeah. We know how the album came about, but can you tell the listeners, how did that album come about? What was the idea?
Well, it was the whole idea was it was a slow burn. I have to say, it was very organic the way it went from the initial ideas to actually the idea of producing an album. As you know, we did the show in Vegas last year, which was really a warm up for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Just so I get that one in, by the way. And,
congratulations.
We had to warm up for that. So we had this idea of playing a couple of shows in Vegas, and it happened to be around Halloween. So as you know, that we all got dressed up in costume, and we selected a bunch of songs that we thought reflected the darker side of influences, like Psycho Killer, the Banshee song Ghost Town by The Special. So we picked all these songs that would reflect the darker side, and we enjoyed it so much that it went on to become an album. And so we'll go and record one new song to go with with these cover versions, and that went so well that we ended up recording 3 or 4 things, 3 of which ended up on the record.
Yeah.
So it was a really nice organic idea that wasn't particularly planned. And the great thing about it is that we finished it very, very quickly. Our albums can be long, tortuous processes that can go on for 2 or 3 years, but this was like boom, boom, boom. We did it really quickly.
And so the whole concept came out of that one show. After the show, were there immediate talks after that show, like, hey, we should record these and put out an album and maybe make this concert like an annual thing? Was there ever anything like that?
Yeah, there was talk of making it an annual event. But that never seemed to go anywhere. And Nick said, "Oh, we should record the show, and we'll just release some live recordings." Was the immediate thing after the show, and I remember Nick saying that. And it just developed from that. We thought, well, actually, we don't want to just release them as live recordings. We'd like to take them into the studio, put our stamp on them, and make them a little bit different, and also go back into the old catalog and kind of rework and reinvent some of those songs and kind of bring them into how we would approach them now, which was quite an interesting idea. Because a lot of those early songs are kind of like sacred ground with the fans, and if we fuck with those songs, they don't like it.
No, it's like remaking a classic movie, right? It's like whenever they remake a classic movie, the fans are like, why did they ruin that movie, So,
yeah. It's hard to do, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I think we pulled it off, to be honest with you.
Yeah, the album is good.
We used to do an electro set. Were you with us at that point where we used to go to the front of the stage and we used to replay some of the earlier songs in like a Kraftwerk style? I'd get up off the drum kit, I'd play electric drums at the front, and John would play like a electric bass keyboard. And some people didn't like it because we were screwing with their favorite songs. They like to hear them exactly how they were recorded.
Yeah, I've heard of this. I've heard of this electro set. Actually, Lisa had told me about this electro set. She actually witnessed one of the shows. And one day at one of the lockups, I found these huge lights with the DD, and I was like, "What is this?" And then someone said, "That's from the electro set." The electro set. And then I found a case with a a guitar, and I took a picture and I sent it to John, and I said, "You want me to bring this?" And he said, he said, "Lock it up and don't bring."
People hated it. Sometimes I go out for dinner with friends and they say, "Can I just tell you something, Roger?" I said, "Yeah, what is it? What is it?" "You've got to get rid of that electro set. You've got to get rid of that part of the set. It's awful." But then I'd see somebody else that thought it was amazing. So it was one of those parts of the show really kind of divided opinion, and I'm sure it's the same with this album. The songs that we've reimagined, I'm sure half the people love it, and maybe some aren't so keen, but we enjoyed it. That's the main thing.
Yeah. When you get, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to ask him what are some of his favorites that they remade, or that one of his favorites from the album, like something that
What's my favorite from the album?
Yeah.
Well, I love the single Black Moonlight. I think that really works. Up tempo song that has darkness and kind of like a pop sensibility all in one. And I think that's quite difficult to do, actually. You tend to think of darker songs as kind of slow and somber, but I think that's quite uplifting, but it still has that kind of dark edge to it. Much in the way that Michael Jackson, I know people don't like to talk about Michael Jackson these days very much, but I'm still a fan of his music, at least.
Yeah.
And he was always able to create up-tempo, danceable songs, like Thriller, that still had like a dark edge to them. And I think Black Moonlight definitely has that. Yeah. And I love Susan the Banshees.
Yeah, that one's good.
So I love that one.
Cool.
I like Black Moonlight and the Ghost Town.
Oh, you like Ghost Town? Okay.
I do.
Yeah.
Especially because I wasn't familiar with that song before.
Uh-huh.
And then the day of the show, I saw it on the set list, and Kevin told me, "Oh, that's a song by the Specials." So had he not told me that, I wouldn't have known. And
I don't think the Specials. I don't think they made it very big in America. They were huge here. They were huge in the UK, but I'm not quite sure that translated.
Yeah.
To the States. I think it's the same with the Susan the Banshees. Actually, I'm not sure whether they translated.
They had a following here.
Did they?
In the early was it late 90s with the "Kiss Them From Me" single, really put them on the map here.
Yeah. But I remember going to see. I saw them in 1977. Mm-hmm. I'm showing my age now, and everyone knows how old I am anyway. But I went to see the Banshees when I was 17, and I stood about 6 feet away from Susie as she was delivering the songs, and I got to say it was a incredible experience that's always lived with me. And she's always been she was one of the first empowered women. I think she always had this powerful presence that you weren't gonna screw with her. So I've always been a big fan.
Yeah, going back there a little, we'll come back to the album. Is that something? Was there musicians in your family? Is that why you started playing drums, or was it did you?
That's a good question, actually. My dad was a wannabe musician. He played loads of different things. He was in a harmonica band.
Uh-huh.
Don't know if you remember those, but there used to be guys that used to go around with the harmonicas that would play instrumental songs. He played the guitar. He played the accordion. He was always teaching himself how to play something.
Uh-huh.
And I got that from my dad because his theory was that you didn't need a lesson in anything. You reckon you could pick up a book and you could learn anything from a book. And they couldn't afford to give me lessons anyway. We never had that much money to spare in the family. So I went and got a book on playing the drums. So reading that, I saved up my pocket money and I got my first drum kit, and I just the basics. I just read from a book and listened to records. I played along to records and just really saw myself. And I get that from my dad because he was a real inspiration in teaching yourself stuff. You didn't need to learn from teachers. You could just learn it yourself. So I thank my dad for that.
Yeah.
My mom, she wasn't that interested in music or playing. It all came from my dad.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Especially now, when people ask me, I tell them, "Man, you can learn everything you want on YouTube. Like you don't have to pay."
But you can, yeah.
These days, I mean, can you imagine if YouTube would have been around when we were younger?
I know. That's what my son says to me now. My 30-year-old son, he says, "Oh, you can learn everything on YouTube. You can teach yourself anything on that." So I had my dad saying you can learn it from a book, and now I have my son saying you can learn everything from YouTube. So I guess that is the new way of learning something.
Even like the toilet breaks, I get on YouTube, figure out how to fix it.
You do what? Sorry?
I said the toilet breaks, I get on YouTube, figure out how to fix it.
Yeah, exactly. You can. Yeah, totally. How about you, Bernard? Were you Are you a musician? Were you? I see some amps in the back.
Oh yeah, I just collect. No, I started playing when I was younger. The same thing. I me and my friends wanted to start a band, and so we each picked what we were going to play. And my parents had a restaurant. They had this cook who played guitar, and he taught me my first chords. Actually, he didn't teach me chords. He had me play along with Santana records, just kind of along with the drums, like. And he said,
I used to play. Yeah, in my first school band, we used to play Santana, Black Magic Woman.
Yeah, and he said if you play along with the percussion, your wrist will follow. And then he started teaching me chords, but really it hindered me, because from then on, when I started playing with other guitar players, even now I can't play with them because my wrist is constantly moving, and I'm not a very good. I can't work well with a rhythm player because they're very
picks up the rhythm. You're almost too rhythmic. You're almost.
I'm too busy.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting thing.
It can be annoying.
Well, often it's playing the simpler thing is the hardest thing, because we all pick up a different way of playing and syncopation and accents in our playing. Mm-hmm. And I find that sometimes it's really hard to get back to playing something very simple.
Yeah.
So I understand exactly what you mean there.
Yeah.
Because John will say, "Oh, just play it simple." But I say, "Well, I am playing it simple." No, you're doing like accents in the hi-hat, or you're bragging on the snare or something. Yeah. So I have to really focus on just doing the simple thing, and it can be harder.
It can be. I think playing simple is harder than really getting into the groove, because you're as a drummer, you're probably just doing the standard beat, but you want to throw in a fill, you want to accent this note or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm playing with an amazing bass player. As you know, John is an incredible, and has become more and more of an incredible player. So I have to almost be. Yeah, I think Charlie Watts used to say, actually, he's like a very firm mattress that everybody else can jump around on. That's how I see my job, particularly with John, because a lot of his playing is very intricate. So I have to be just a firm foundation for him. And I always find if I don't get mentioned in the review, I'm happy with that, because I'm doing my job. I'm the foundation. But it's not necessarily trying to put something out, aren't I great? If I'm a foundation for what everybody's doing, the show goes well, then I'm happy with that.
Yeah. Did you?
I was gonna. We talked about the question, asking him about has he ever played, or since you've played with John for so long,
have I ever played with anybody else?
Yeah, like, is it just? Would you even want to? I mean, you're just so in tune with each other. You can just look at each other and know what to do. I mean, you might not even.
Actually, I've played with a couple of other really great bass players at different times, particularly when we did the Arcadia project, which was like a side shoot. I played with a bass player called Mark Egan, who was a really amazing player. But there's definitely something special going on between the two of us, because we learned to play together. I hadn't done much really as a drummer before I'd met John. I'd been in school bands and a couple of other bands that did okay. So I was very much still in that learning curve. And John had just picked up the bass when I met him, because he was a guitar player before that, and he'd literally just picked up the bass. And I remember sitting in John's bedroom actually and listening to Chic records when we were 19 years old in his bedroom in Birmingham. He said, "Have a listen to this." And I was into punk. I love punk rock up at that point. And he said, listen to the rhythm section on this. And of course, it was Tony Thompson, Bernard Edwards, and Nile. And I thought, wow, that sounds amazing. So we went back to the rehearsal room, and John said, can you play funky hi-hats? Have you done funky hi-hats before? And I said, yeah. And of course I had it.
Yeah.
So I just started playing these funky hi-hats. John started to play, and we learned together. And I think that will always be with us whenever we come back together. We have an instant rapport where I know what he's going to do before he does it, and he almost knows what I'm going to do before I do it. So it's a bit like being in a long marriage, 40 years, where you almost know what the other person's going to say before they say it. So it's a long-term relationship, and it's one that I think still works most of the time,
for sure.
And I'm sure it'll work for a while. Yeah.
I've noticed that when we go into rehearsals, you guys always lock in. Like, everyone's a little rusty going in after months of not being around each other. Then we go into rehearsals, and I hear John very well in my ears every night. But once you guys go into rehearsal, you guys just lock in. The way you said, like, you ever done funky hi-hats? Like, John still speaks that language.
He still what?
He still speaks that language. That's how he describes it. He has a term for everything. Play it swampy, do this.
Exactly. Nobody knows what we're talking about, really, because none of us are schooled in music. None of us have proper technical terms.
Yeah.
But you have the connection.
Writing music. So we have all our own terms that nobody else would understand. But it's weird. It's exactly right what you say, because we're always very nervous when we get back together. If we've not played for a few weeks or even a few months, you always think, God, have I still got it? Can I still play? Is it all going to be a disaster? But then when we start, I always kind of get this surprise that it's still working, and we can still do it, and we lock in. And, it's always a surprise, because I always think the worst, that it's all going to fall apart and it's going to be a mess.
That's human nature.
That usually comes together pretty quickly.
Yeah. Well, if you don't expect too much, you're not going to be disappointed, right?
That's exactly what my mom used to say.
Really?
That's probably where I got it from. She said, don't expect too much and you won't be disappointed.
Real quick, let's get back to the album. How soon into the recording? Because, like you said, you guys recorded this album really quick, and I'm familiar with your recording techniques. How soon did you guys start talking about getting Andy and Warren involved? And what was that process like? Did you guys reach out to them? Was it discussed amongst the band?
Well, yeah. Again, that was a little bit of an organic process. It wasn't something that was particularly planned in advance. And I often think the best things tend to happen by accident. Things that are planned or don't always go to plan. Like when we were going to have Andy play with us in LA for the Rock and Roll
Hall of Fame.
Yeah, here we go again.
Congratulations, by the way.
Oh, thank you. And we were so looking forward to having Andy back with us. As you know, we had a rehearsal room set up ready. It was going to be the day that Andy came back, the day that he came back to play with us after 15 years or whatever it was. And we were so excited. And we heard the day before that he couldn't make it due to health issues, which was a big shock to us. We had no idea that he was unwell. So that was a big disappointment. So the next best thing was to get him involved in the record. Yeah. And I believe that Simon called him, said, are you interested in doing the album? He said, yeah. And straight away he said, yeah. So that was great. And that led on to getting Warren involved again, which was cool, because I've never actually played on an original song with Warren. I played a couple of cover versions with him on the Thank You record. So it was great to connect musically with Warren.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, our wonderful longtime guitarist Dom is also on the album, who plays some really lovely stuff on the record. So Niall as well played on the record. So we've had this lovely family of guitar players come back together with us, and I think it's been a really great experience.
That's cool. Was it a I don't want to use the word healing, but was it kind of a healing, getting everyone just, communicating?
I have actually used that word. Yeah, I did an interview and I used exactly that word, that it's been a bit of a healing experience. We've never really badly fallen out with anybody, but you tend to, when you leave the core of the band, you tend to go off as I did when I left the band in the middle of the 80s. I went off on my own tangent and I did my own thing, and I kind of lost contact with everybody. And I think it was the same with Andy and Warren. Really, they'd gone off on their own tangent. We hadn't had much communication. So as you say, it's kind of like a healing experience for the relationship with everybody. And I hope that creative relationship can continue.
Yeah, because you guys did something that was pretty magnificent together, and it'd be a shame to just not acknowledge that in your lives. You don't have to make music together, you don't have to jam, you don't have to tour, but just to be able to say, remember when we did that?
It's to work together in some way. Exactly. Yeah. Because when I sit down every night when we play, and I'm playing Ordinary World and Come Undone, which Warren was a massive part of those songs. So, it's kind of in my consciousness every night anyway. And of course, all the early stuff that Andy played on is so great. So it's good to have those relationships kind of working again.
That's great, man. That's great. Since you touched on this, we had talked about asking you this in the 80s when you did leave. It was I've read in interviews, it was kind of like you got in this space where you couldn't go out, you couldn't do anything, and you really didn't know how to handle it. Now this second act or third act for Duran, do you find yourself easily like being able to get out, talk to fans, not feeling as trapped?
Well, it was a very different, the early 80s. No, that's a good question. The early 80s was a totally different experience to now. I remember being in a hotel in New York, the Berkshire Hotel it was called. And I remember coming down to the lobby, and there would be literally hundreds of kids with their faces pressed up against the doors at the front of the building. And they would be there 24/7. So you couldn't go out of the hotel and go down and get a packet of cigarettes or whatever you need to do. You were kind of trapped in your environment. And I think unless you've been through that, it's a difficult thing to explain that feeling. It's kind of you gain a lot of things with that amount of fame, but you also lose a lot of freedom as well. So I think that was difficult. And also I was never a big fan of celebrity. And I'm even now, I'm not really a fan of celebrity. I'll get on with my life as quietly as I can. And when I leave the stage or the studio, I like to go back to a normal life. And we couldn't do that in the early 80s. It was a constant thing of not really being able to escape that celebrity. So that was difficult. But I think the second term or the third term or wherever we are now has been a lot older, because I think our audience has grown up with us as well.
Yeah.
Our average age of an audience member back then was 12 years old, I think, and they're all in that kind of hormonal teen kind of period of their life. And they were pretty crazy, I've got to say. But thankfully now we have a an audience that's matured with us that will just come to the shows, and we pretty well get left alone. So it's a much quieter, nicer existence. So it was very different when I came back.
Yeah, there's still a handful with their faces pressed up against the glass.
Yeah, there's about 3 of them, I think, last time I was in New York in the hotel. Yeah, we still get 3 or 4. But I can outrun them, so we're
Speaking of being home after tour, what's a typical day like for you, man, when you're not touring?
Oh, typical day. Well, I've got a 12-year-old son. So the main thing is to get him up to school early in the morning. And I've got to say, I'm not an early morning person by nature. And that's one of the reasons I became a musician, because I didn't like getting up in the morning. So that's the first thing, getting up and getting Julian off. And I don't know, we've been doing a lot of press, things like this most days. But you know, I like to live a very simple life. I ride a bike. I've got a bike that I get around on. My son's a really good football player, so I spend quite a lot of time bringing him to matches and picking him up and waiting for him to finish and whatever. So just a lot of normal. I'd like to do a lot of normal, everyday things, really.
Just a normal dad.
Exactly. Yeah, totally non-celeb if possible.
It's funny you say your son's 12. I remember when I came on board, he was just a baby.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, of course, now we're getting the grandchildren involved. Man. They came to Simon's grandchildren came to the show in London, so we're now getting. And I've just had a grandchild, so we're going to have the grandkids rocking up now to the show. So just kind of shows you the longevity of the band, that we're still doing it, you know, 40 something years later. And I don't know about you, but when I was 19, 20, I never looked a week in advance, never mind a 40 year career in front of you. So I'm quite amazed that we're still here and we're still performing and we're still writing records. It's quite it's a privilege, I would say.
Yeah, it is, right? I always say it's a privilege to do what we do, whether you be the artist on stage or the people setting up. Like, we are in a very specialized industry, and it is a privilege.
To come and see us. You know, when we played in Hyde Park, you know, 80,000 people came out to see us in one night in London, and I'm always amazed by that. You know, I'm amazed that people still come and see us, but there's obviously something about us that they still like.
Yeah. Did you ever have that fear before you walk on stage? Or, you know, like Kevin and I talk about these nightmares we have where the show's starting, but the gear's not put up. And, you know, we constantly have those gig nightmares. Do you ever have these nightmares where you're walking on stage and you guys walk out and there's no one there?
No, my recurring nightmare is, and I don't want to make Kev, my tech, too nervous here, but my recurring nightmare is I walk on stage and I start playing and the drum kit starts falling apart. Like the snare drum will fall down, it will start rolling across the stage, and then the cymbals will fall, and I'm just there with all the drums scattered on the floor. And we do have an audience. We have like thousands of people there in the Dream, and I'm looking like a complete idiot because everything has fallen apart. That's my reoccurring dream, but it's never actually happened yet.
Yeah,
in a real live show.
There's still time.
Yeah, but I do get that fear every night that something's going to go wrong. I always have that. Doesn't matter how many times we played a show. And I speak to a lot of performers, and a lot of people do feel this every night. You know, you still get this feeling that it's not going to go quite right, and maybe I'm going to forget everything and I'm not going to play well enough. And, you know, this is the night that I get found out as being a fake. But then, you know, it always, I mean, 99% of the time, it all goes well. I think they call it the critical voice that I think everybody has in their head that's telling them that everything's not going to go quite right. Doesn't matter how much rehearsal time you've done. There's this little voice that tells you that, you're going to fuck up tonight. It's not going to go right tonight.
You fear the imposter syndrome, if you've ever heard of imposter syndrome.
I don't think I have that as much these days. I think I had it when I was younger.
Yeah.
Definitely suffered from imposter syndrome, because I think one of the reasons was our ascent to success and fame was so quick that you almost deserve, you know, you could feel that you didn't really deserve that amount of success because we didn't spend years going around the clubs and the bars, and, you know, our ascent was like, boom, we signed a record deal with EMI. And by the next year, we were huge. You know, we had a lot of success all around the world. So I guess that could give you a feeling of being a little bit of an imposter. But I think as we get older, I think we kind of lost that a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I have a little bit of that, you know, but of course, man.
No, you can't have that.
Yeah, you know that. You need to settle an argument with Lisa and I. We were talking like, how do you, when you're home from a tour, how long before you pick up a set of drumsticks?
Or do you at all?
Do
you just go home and you're like, that's it?
No, I had a little play before I came on this podcast. So I was kind of hanging around in the house waiting for this to start, and I thought, what can I do? Oh, no, I'll sit down and play the drums for a bit.
Okay.
But it's usually a couple of weeks, because usually I've done so much playing over the tour that I get back and I really feel that I need a break. As much as anything, I'm hurting when I get back. Everything is, you know, my back's hurting, my wrists will be hurting, my legs will be hurting. So I really need time to let my body recover. So maybe in a couple of weeks after the tour, I'll start playing.
Yeah.
Again at home.
We recently heard Simon and John doing an interview, and they asked them this question. I'm going to steal this question. They said that during the tour, you're so into it, the adrenaline's kicking, that you don't really realize, you know, what you're doing to your body, and then it just stops, and then you go home, and then it just all catches up with you, and you're like, oh, my toes hurt. Oh, what's this pain here? You know,
you probably get the same thing. You guys probably get the same thing. You know, all the physical work that you guys are doing on tour. I'm sure when you stop, although you've not really stopped because you've carried on, Sir Bernie, with you. But yeah, there's definitely an element of that when your body stops doing what it's been doing every night for months, there's definitely an element of having the after effects of that. So I usually give myself a week or two off when I get back.
And then the cold baths, you get in the cold baths, and
yeah, I always have a hot bath when I'm hurting, but I should be really having a cold bath, shouldn't I?
Yeah, I think
that's what the football players do.
Yeah. In all the years you guys have been touring, is there a particular place you love to visit that you see on the itinerary and you're like, I can't wait to get there? Other than home, of course, at the end of the itinerary.
Well, I always like to play in Birmingham because that's hometown. And I mean, last time my dad was there, and you get members of the extended family that show up and people that you've not seen for years. So Birmingham's an always a special show that I look forward to. And I think you probably noticed that the reception in Birmingham was really something else. This tour. I remember the roar before we got on stage, just as we left the dressing room, between the roar that I heard and the feeling that I felt from the audience was one of the strongest on the tour, and it felt like a real homecoming.
Yeah. I know when we did those two shows at the Academy, the two small shows, just as the band was being lifted and everyone was starting to play shows again, your dad was there. I believe he was it might have been his birthday, but he was back by the soundboard. But I remember the crowd just losing it in that small place, and I thought, we're gonna this show's gonna go nuts. Like, there's nothing between me and the fans to protect me.
Yeah, those were great, actually. Those small shows.
Yeah.
I think the feeling after COVID has been really special. I think people have really enjoyed, and they were the first ones pretty well after COVID. I remember that we played. And it's been a real special time, I think, that everyone's really enjoyed getting back out again. And that's still happening, I think. It's like when we played at Forest Hills in New York, the reaction and the amount of people that came out to see us was incredible. And I think people are still in that kind of post-pandemic state of mind where they're really enjoying what they missed for 2 or 3 years. So I think that's been part of the success story behind the tour that we've just done.
Yeah, it was, and technically that was the last show of the tour, but not the last show of our tour. We went on to play one more show without Bastille and Chic.
That's right.
Show, that show was great. It was really special.
I always think Forest Hills have been the real last show.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It was technically.
Yeah, yeah.
For all of us, it was.
Yeah.
If you could have done anything else, did you always want to be a drummer, or was there something else you wanted to be growing up?
Wow, I think the first thing I ever wanted to be was a fireman. For what reason, I don't know. I think I liked the uniform. So I think I had the idea that I wanted to wear something that was out of the normal. Everything I seemed to want to be had a uniform. So that's kind of how you had to be a member of Duran Duran. I think you had to like dressing up in a certain way that was different from the norm. So that was the first thing I wanted to be. And then I couldn't really settle on anything. I've got to say, I was one of these teenage kids that was a bit disenfranchised. I didn't want to spend. My dad works in a factory, actually. My dad worked in a car factory, and I just couldn't see myself. And I used to see him working like 40 hours a week. He used to leave when it was dark in the morning. He'd come back when it was dark at night. He'd also work nights as well. And I just thought, I can't see myself giving that amount of time and energy to an organization or somebody else. I had to try and find something where I was my own boss, really, that the energy that I was investing was going to be mine. What I created had to be for me, not for somebody else. That's the thing that I had when I was a teenager. Plus, I was pretty useless at anything. Anything I tried to put my hand at, I was pretty awful. And then drumming came along, and that was kind of like my savior. It was the one thing that I sat down to do that I thought, God, I'm good at this. And there was kids in my school that had been playing for years, and they'd had teachers, and they did music classes. But after a few weeks, I actually felt not to sound big-headed or anything, but I actually felt that I could play better than they could.
Yeah.
So I was like, wow, I really found something. And that is a gift, actually, finding something that you have a true aptitude for. That's a gift when you find that, because so many people, I believe, have real talents for so many different things, but they never come across them. They never stumble across them. But I stumbled across this thing that was a life changer. It was like a hallelujah moment, because I knew that I was good at this and that it's something that could take me out of the normal, I won't say the ordinary world, I'll say the normal world. And it did. And I just persevered. I'd come home from school every day, and I had to play before my dad got in from work, because he got in from work at 5 o'clock. So I had this window between 4 o'clock and 5 o'clock when I could play. And so I'd come home from school, and every day I'd play and play and play until I got really good. And I didn't quite know what I was preparing for, but it seemed like I was preparing for something.
Yeah.
And of course, the preparation, when it met an opportunity, that's when you become successful. So I did all this preparation. I didn't know what for, but in the end, it was worth it.
Yeah, I believe that you find something, you cling on to it, and you don't know what you're preparing for, but eventually that opportunity is going to come along, and you got to take it when it,
Prepared. Yeah, you're ready. But I've got to say, the great thing about when I grew up, there's nothing to distract you. We didn't have distractions. All the distractions that I see that my son has now. He has the telephone to get on and go onto YouTube Shorts, and he has gaming. He loves to go on gaming, and all this stuff. We didn't have that. We had like 3 TV channels. We didn't have computers. We didn't even have a telephone in our house. I mean, that's how it was. So when you got into something, it could have your complete attention. And I think that's become more and more difficult for kids. And I kind of feel sorry for the kids that are growing up with all this information that they're having chucked at them, news and, YouTube and, all the social media platform, that they're being bombarded with information that's taking up space that could be used for creativity.
Yeah.
Well, they say that actually to be really creative, you have to experience a certain amount of boredom for your brain to become creative. And we certainly had plenty of boredom when we were growing up. There was nothing to do in Birmingham in the 1970s, and it'd be raining outside most of the time. So you could really, whatever you put your mind to, it would have your full attention. And I often think that's why so much great music came out of the UK in the 70s and the 80s. It's because the weather was generally bad outside. We didn't have any distractions. We didn't have 50 TV stations, so we could put our heart and soul into music.
Yeah. Does it make you feel good?
That America hasn't produced amazing music, but I think it's one of the reasons why the UK produce a lot of good music.
Yeah. Does it make you feel good when you're put in that category of bands, especially from Birmingham, Judas Priest, Black Sabbath, Duran Duran? Those bands came out of Birmingham, and you guys are usually mentioned in that. I know at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame celebration that we went to. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. Did you mention the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame again?
I was actually in the elevator with Rob Halford, and I said, "Hey, congrats on your induction." And he's like, "Oh, it's so great being inducted with these other Brahmies."
Oh, that's what he said. Really?
Yeah, and he's like, I went in there, and I felt like I'd known Simon all my life, and But does it feel good being in in that group of bands that you guys made it your mark, not only on the 80s, not only with the comeback in the 90s, but you guys have made a dent in this music industry that and I'll tell you from personal experience, when I go to another crew and they say, "Oh, who do you work for?" and I say, "Well, I normally do Duran Duran," everyone's like, "Oh my God," like,
oh, really?
Yeah, and people really love your music. They celebrate it, and you guys have made songs that have been in people's lives. Especially I'm 52. I'll throw in that too. Lisa won't let me get away with just saying 50. I'm 52, and I remember all the songs, so I know. So does it make you feel good that people celebrate the 5 of you, 6 of you, and now the current lineup?
So, I mean, the great thing, I mean, we were very different to what had gone before us in Birmingham. But because we had half of Led Zeppelin came from close to where we grew up, we had ELO, we had Judas Priest, we had Black Sabbath, Ozzy Osbourne, of course. We had UB40, we had Dexys Midnight Runners made it kind of just before we did. And there was a sense that you could make it from that city. We didn't want to be Black Sabbath, but we knew that, could possibly be a route out of the city, could be with music.
Yeah.
Because it produced some really great artists from very different genres. And you got the feeling that we could actually make it. And that was one of the great things for me, actually, about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I mentioned it again.
Congratulations, by the way.
Yeah. Thank you. Was seeing Judas Priest, because the last time I'd seen them was in Birmingham in 1976.
Oh, wow.
Teenager, and I'd gone to the town hall in Birmingham, and I used to go and see pretty well anything that was on there that was any good. And I'd seen Kraftwerk one week, and I saw Judas Priest the next week. So then I got to sit there at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Congratulations.
Judas Priest, 40-something years later from, I was pretty well in the front row. And that was a really
amazing.
Great, I have to say. It was kind of like going back to your roots in some way. So musically, it was an amazing city to come from. We also, it was also a multicultural city. We had great reggae artists like Steel Pulse. I think I mentioned UB40. We had The Beat that also came out of Birmingham. So for some real talent come out of the city.
Yeah, that's cool, man. That's cool. We only had in Texas, we had ZZ Top and Pantera.
And who?
Pantera, a metal band.
Pantera. Oh, yeah. Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. We like them.
Yeah.
Man, we really appreciate you taking the time. We have a few more questions for you if you have time for them.
Okay, yeah. I've got to go and take my son to play football, actually.
Okay. Soccer.
That's my next job of the day.
If you could spend the day in someone else's shoes, who would it be?
That's a really interesting question, and not one I've been asked before. I don't know. I'd probably become a politician of some sort for a day. And I would probably want to work on a peace strategy for Palestine and Israel. I would like to. I'd love to have the power to somehow bring that to a peaceful conclusion. So that would probably be. I don't know who the politician would be, but yeah, I think politician for the day would be a pretty cool place to be.
Very
In fact, we went
powerful politician that could do that.
we went to the White House we got invited there.
I remember that.
Oh, yeah.
Sure, actually, and that was a really great experience. Just to feel that seat of power in America was quite some. We never got to meet Joey. He was
Joey.
in fact, I believe he only comes out to meet you too. Is what I heard. But that was a really cool experience.
Oh, I like how you got that one in right towards the end.
Yeah. Well, it makes a change from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. Did that mean a lot to you? Not to no pun intended. Did it mean a lot to you personally to be inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? Lots of artists say like, it doesn't mean anything to me or this or that, but personally to you.
Well, I think before we got in there, I think we said we didn't care.
Yeah.
But once we were invited. I think it became a really positive experience.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like we were embraced by America,
Yeah.
and I don't think we were a band like U2 that got very much critical acclaim in the early days. I think because we had this very quick ascent to fame and we had a very young following. I think people assumed that we weren't going to be around for very long, and we didn't get any acclaim for our writing ability. So it was kind of sweet that we finally got there.
Yeah.
After many, many years, we've finally got critical. I realized that a lot of artists have songs written for them, and they get producers in, and they get writers, and they get lyricists that come and assist the artist. But all our work, generally, even from day one and all the early stuff, we wrote all that music ourselves. We had producers that would come in and record it and help us with arrangements. But we've always been an independent group of people that have written together. And I don't, particularly in the early days, people didn't realize that we had that. They probably assumed that a lot of the stuff was being written by other people.
Yeah.
So it was nice to get that kind of acknowledgement from America, many years after we came over there and played our first shows.
Yeah. Well, do you guys, your songs have stood the test of time. I often say this, and I drop an artist's name, and I won't do that. But there's artists now who won't be talked about in 10 years, and they have hits right now. But you guys, for over 40 years now, people are still talking about,
Oh, here's Gisela. Do you want to come on the camera?
Who's that?
It's Bernie.
Hi.
Hello.
We're doing a podcast.
Oh, nice.
Come on, you can't see you.
Oh, God. Hi.
Hi. It's good to see you.
Trying to keep ourselves warm in the weather here.
Yeah, it's good.
We'll let you get going. We just have one more question.
Well, Elisa had a question about advice.
Oh. Is there a meaningful piece of advice that you've received that you would want to pass along or share that might be, I don't know. Anybody?
As far as being in a band, as being a
I don't know, maybe you met someone and another musician gave you a piece of advice, or maybe your dad, or I don't know, maybe.
Well, the best bit of advice I think I ever had was from my friend. I used to have a friend called Jeff Thomas, who actually became the first singer of Duran Duran before Simon became the singer for a short period. And I think I was 16, 17 years old, and I had a drum kit, and all my mates were getting cars. They were all getting really cool cars or motorbikes or whatever. And I said to him, I'm thinking about selling my drum kit and getting a car. So what do you think? And he said, well, the thing about a car, as soon as you buy it, it starts to devalue. It's going to become worth less. He said, if you keep the drum kit, one day you might be able to start making money from playing the drum kit.
Yeah.
I said, and of course I wasn't earning a cent at that point. I had about £10 in my pocket to my name. And I thought, you know what, he's right. If I persevere with the drum kit for a few years, maybe eventually I can start earning a bit of money for it. If I get the car, I can't earn anything from that.
Yeah.
So I think that was the best piece of advice that I ever received.
Yeah. And here you are on the Is Breakfast Included podcast. Last question. Our podcast is called Is Breakfast Included, Roger? And if you were having breakfast with us, what would you have?
I don't actually eat breakfast. I have a cup of coffee, maybe.
Hey, that's good enough.
I'm the strangest person in the world. I know everybody says that breakfast is the most important meal of the day, but I've not eaten breakfast for years. Because I don't get hungry. I don't get hungry till lunchtime.
Right on.
So it would be a cup of coffee.
Well, that's good enough.
Cream, sugar.
All right, guys. Well, thank you for your time.
Thanks so much, Roger. It was good talking to you. Thank you for your time, buddy.
Enjoy the rest of the shows. I'm sure it's going to be amazing.
Thanks.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Wow, Roger Taylor. It was super cool to find out a little bit about him and what he gets up to when he's not on tour. A huge thank you to Roger for sharing his time and stories with us. I guess I'll never know how he takes his coffee. Okay, we've got some big news. This week, we launched our new YouTube channel where you can view this and all the other episodes of our podcast, Is Breakfast Included? Currently, most of them are audio only, but this Roger Taylor interview is a full video episode. You know you want to check that out. So just go to youtube.com/@isbreakfastincluded. Again, youtube.com/@isbreakfastincluded. You could also go to isbreakfast.com and click the YouTube button at the bottom of the page. When you're there, be sure to smash that subscribe button. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. If you enjoy our podcast and you want to show support, check out isbreakfast.bigcartel.com and order a t-shirt or two for the holidays. We just launched a new shirt color, and it's only going to be in the store for a limited time. It's the gorgeous Oxblood Black. You definitely want to get one. Stay tuned for more episodes, and remember, the beat goes on, whether breakfast is included or not. See you next time.